Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we have the latest from the live radar. Run through the latest weather warnings as we have had numerous changes today as Storm Amy, as expected, has now been named. We have got widespread yellow warnings issued for rain over the next couple of days, and then for rain and wind into Friday and Saturday for that system, especially for Scotland and Northern Ireland. I do suspect we will see some updates over the next day or two with yellow warnings perhaps extended further southwards, and I do suspect we'll definitely be seeing some amber warnings as well. There is even a small chance of seeing a red danger to life warning considering some of the runs we're still seeing. UKV today, as we'll see after, is still showing gusts approaching 100 miles per hour towards western Scotland over higher ground. So yeah, we could be looking at perhaps a red warning there. Again, it is all about impact. How strong will those winds be? What time of day do they hit? And what sort of areas and, of course, infrastructure could they hit as well? So, of course, we'll look at that in the latest UKV. Beyond that, as we progress into the early portion to middle portion of October, things are going to settle down a little bit. Now, we're not going to see a big area of high pressure slap bang over the top of us. What we are going to see is oscillating between low pressure, high pressure. So we are likely to see at times some decent conditions, perhaps some dry and some sunny conditions, maybe up towards the high teens, but at the same time we could see other intermittent periods of wetter and cooler conditions. And of course we'll look at all of that in the second half of the video. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe. Now as you start on the live radar, we are seeing a bit of a southeast northwest split at the moment, and this is just going to get exacerbated over the next 48 hours or so as we continue to see really heavy rain pushing in from the southwest. Now at the moment we've not got too much rain. We saw some rain earlier this morning, but it's faded away a little bit. At the moment it's not doing too much, but overnight tonight into Thursday we are going to see the precipitation for Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland and Western Scotland to really pep up, and we have got warnings issued here. Now, of course, across the southeast, it's actually drier and a little bit warmer. It's not been amazing today. There's a bit of rain across East Anglia, and there's quite a bit of cloud around. But relative to what's coming from the north and the west, it is going to be a lot better. I'm recording this around 6:15 on Wednesday afternoon or evening. Now, NXT temperatures today, not too bad. With this far-fetched southwesterly wind, it's actually pretty mild out there. The air masses are pretty warm as well. And again, we'll have to see how that does develop over the next few days. It's actually aiding Storm Amy into Friday, really fueling that system as we've got very cold air to the north of that system, very warm air to the south, and that temperature collision really is powering up that system. Eventually though, into next week, once Storm Amy clears, we are going to see much colder air moving in before it does recover after that. Now do look at the latest weather warnings. We do have a rain warning that has just come into force, and it does expire at midnight on Thursday evening for persistent heavy rain leading to transport disruption. Now you can see this was updated this morning. It was updated to extend into the Outer Hebrides, and including potentially landslides and reducing overall likelihood of medium impacts. So we are still looking at pretty significant conditions here, just adjusting that slightly by the Met Office. Again, we're looking at perhaps 30 to 50 millimetres quite widely, with 60 to 80 over some of the highest ground, and some stronger winds coming with that as well. Now it's the same warning there into Thursday, but as we progress into Friday, we see a lot more warnings issued for Storm Amy. So we've got a rain warning issued from midday on Friday until midnight on Friday. These are the weather fronts for Storm Amy. They are going to be quite quick to move through, and will move through during the afternoon for these areas before the really strong winds do move in overnight. So again, we're not looking at, huge amount of precipitation, but it is going to be intense and fall in a short period of time. So you can see a band of heavy rain associated with Storm Amy will cross Scotland during Friday afternoon and evening. 20 to 30 mils quite widely in a 6 to 9 hour period, with 40 to 50 over some of the hilly areas. And again, of course, on top of the precipitation we're going to see over the next day or so, then yeah, really could tot up to potentially some flooding as we do progress into the weekend. Now we do have wind warnings issued. Now this is the primary issue that we are going to see from Storm Amy. So we've got this warning for Northern Ireland, and at the moment we are looking quite widely at 50 to 60 miles per hour Friday and overnight into Saturday. Could get up to 60 or 70 and could exceed 70 in some spots. Now the big thing I'm noticing is it's medium impact, very low likelihood. So it's the impact level that could get towards that amber zone. So we'll have to wait and see if that likelihood does increase. And that was only issued this morning. Now we've got a wind warning here for much of Scotland, into parts of northern Wales and northern England, and this is a much beefier warning, and you can see it goes from 6 p.m. on Friday until midnight on Saturday. So those winds are going to peak overnight Friday into Saturday, but you can see they are going to remain very strong even into Saturday evening. So 50 to 60 quite widely, 60 to 70 for a time in most areas, and then we could get above 80, and from the looks of the latest UKV, I suspect 90 or 100 is possible. Again, it is all due to ensemble forecasting here from the Met Office. We're looking at all the scenarios when they're sort of factoring their warnings. So I suspect there are still some runs not producing as significant a system. That's why it's only yellow warnings at the moment. But I suspect if the majority of runs are correct, which would be closer to that scenario the UKV is showing, then we could be looking at amber, and as I said, maybe even red. And you can see the winds will ease for most parts on Saturday afternoon, but will continue to be very strong across the Northern Isles and parts of the far north of Scotland all the way to the end of the day. So very interestingly, it is medium impact and increasingly likely. So I suspect tomorrow, once the updates come out, we could see amber issued for this system. You can see it's not in the far right column in the highest impact. So at the moment, hasn't got scope to move to a red warning, but definitely is possible if runs like the UKV run today are correct. 100 miles per hour definitely would be threatening that high impact level. So we'll have to wait and see. And you can see it's Saturday, still got those wind warnings issued. So at the moment, you can see there are preliminary warnings. They're not the full deal, they've not got all the detail, and I suspect they're not covering all the areas, and I do definitely think amber will be issued. So I suspect we'll see more updates tomorrow, but you can see Met Office now really sort of winding up with that, with their warnings for this system. As we've said over the last couple of days, we've been expecting this pretty much from kind of Sunday, Monday time, and now it is finally pretty confident it is going to arrive. Now, if you look at the latest UKV, you can see precipitation moving in overnight tonight in from the southwest, but really only impacting parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland there. Now, it will pep up during Thursday as we see quite a severe low moving through. Now, this isn't Storm Amy. It looks pretty vicious with a lot of heavy rain, but it isn't Storm Amy this at all. It's just a more standard low. Winds will get up towards 50 or 60 into the early hours of Friday, but it's nothing too crazy. It's during Friday afternoon, though, Storm Amy really arrives, and you can see the really well focused core of the storm there. And it's on this southern flank during the early hours of Saturday where we are going to see the strongest winds. You can see some really heavy rain, and you can see the warm front moves through, the cold front, a really well structured system this, and you can see even a squall feature for southern and east areas during the early hours of Saturday along that cold boundary. Now, lots of showers for Saturday, and again, still some very strong winds as it clears, and then slowly into Sunday things do settle down, but still quite a bit of cloud and some rain could continue to move in even into Monday there. Now, do look at the mean sea level pressure. You can see the northwest-southeast split at the moment. High pressure still dominating the southeast, but then we see that first low move through, only getting down to kind of 990 millibars. So yeah, deep, and yeah, gonna produce some strong winds, but nothing too insane. Storm Amy approaches, and look at the centre of that low, down to 942, I think, there around midnight on Saturday. Again, all depends on its track. If it's closer to us, it's probably going to be less deep, and the winds will be shifted further southwards, where on this track, those winds are strongest across central, western and northern Scotland, looking really intense there. We did see a couple of runs over the past few days getting down into the 930s. UKV not doing that today, but nonetheless, 940s is still pretty extreme indeed. Now, into Saturday, look at this. The winds stay very strong. Storm Amy doesn't move away particularly quickly, but they do slowly ease into Sunday as the isobar starts to stretch out. Now, do look at those wind gusts. You can see the low approaching for Thursday is going to have some strong winds, 50, maybe 60 miles per hour during the afternoon and evening. But then really into Friday, the winds pick up. Look at that, widely 60 to 70 on approach, up towards 80. And then you can see that spell of perhaps in excess of 90 or 100 miles per hour as that system moves. So you can see a ring around the centre of the low there, really extreme as it does move in. Of course, I think the run yesterday, or I think it was Monday actually, did show 120 miles per hour. Now, I did say at the time that was probably overdoing it, and from the looks of the latest runs, it was overdoing it. But still, nonetheless, 100 plus is still pretty extreme there. Now, it should ease into Saturday, so not going to see those 100 pluses into Saturday, but still widely 60 to 70, maybe even 80 there in a few spots towards the far north and northeast. Still very blustery elsewhere during Saturday, and it will slowly ease there into Sunday. So a really extreme system. I suspect we'll see numerous more warnings issued and upgrades to those warnings. And of course, we'll kind of have the final forecast out Thursday evening. So tomorrow evening, or probably maybe even Friday as well, looking at those warnings and the latest runs. But at the moment, looks like a really lively storm, kind of on the top end of what we can see in the UK. Not the most ridiculous storm we've ever seen. Of course, we've seen strong storms impacting more populated areas. Of course, the strongest winds here are more isolated further northwards. But regardless, it is from a sort of meteorological perspective, really, really extreme system. Now, if you look at the max temperatures, you see this afternoon touching high teens in the south, so it's actually pretty mild with that southwesterly wind. As we progress into Thursday, similar, 18, 19 perhaps, and Friday could see again muggy conditions as Storm Amy approaches there into Saturday. Really muggy overnight, 17 or 18 degrees in that warm sector, but very quickly into Saturday, it's pretty cold, only 10 to 14 degrees in that cold sector. Pretty chilly into Sunday as well, and remaining, average or below average, and that continues into Monday, but I suspect we will see a rebound as we head into the following week. Now, if you look at the latest GFS now, you can see the southwesterly winds pushing at the moment. No real signs of any big storm systems, but very quickly you can see Amy coming along the jet stream there to our south, really picking up and pushing in as we head into Friday and Saturday. Really lively system, and it only slowly clears through the weekend. You can see, though, what I mean by longer term. We're going to see lots of high pressure around. It's not going to dominate, it's not going to be right over the top of us, but it's going to be pretty influential. And you see towards the end of the run, it actually does start to develop over the top of us, which would be a little bit of a nicer scenario. So we'll have to wait and see with that longer term prospects, but at least kind of medium term, going to be oscillating between high pressure, low pressure, some decent days, but probably some pretty poor days as well. Again, if we just go back to the next few days and just have a look a bit more detail at Storm Amy, we can see the mean sea level pressure there into the early hours of Saturday, very similar to the UKV, around 942 millibars, so pretty strong agreement there from both of those runs. And again, if we look at the max wind gusts, we are looking at 130, 140 kilometers per hour, so that is around that 80 or 90 mile per hour gust mark. And again, high resolution would probably show a little bit higher. Now, if you look at the GM, it's very similar with the southwesterly winds at the moment. Eventually, that system, Storm Amy, moves through, and then again, we kind of oscillate between high pressure and low pressure towards day 10. And yeah, very similar to the GFS. If we run back to Storm Amy and again zoom in, we'll be able to see that the system, very similar to the other runs, around 942 again towards the centre of that system. So pretty strong agreement once again. And if we look at the wind gusts, you can see again looking at 130, 140 kilometers per hour. So again, 80, 90 miles per hour. So pretty strong agreement here from the runs. We are still 48 hours away from the system arriving. So sometimes we still have quite a few discrepancies at this time frame, but it looks like the runs are all in agreement here, or at least the latest runs are all in agreement. If we look at the Easterdorf midnight run, again, southwesterly winds over the next few days, and then we see Storm Amy move through, really similar to the other runs there. And then again, we see things settling down a little bit longer term, but still oscillating between high pressure and low pressure. A little bit of a cast-off low potentially developing there with high pressure surrounding it. That could give some quite slow-moving precipitation, some horrific conditions perhaps, but it is isolated, not seeing that from other runs, and it is in the longer term. So as I said, medium term, definitely looks like it's going to get back to something a little bit more average. Temperatures not really too remarkable, and decently dry days at times. Again, if we just go back to the start of the run and have a look at Storm Amy again in a little bit more detail, again you can see it moving through there, and very similar to the other runs, around 942 towards the centre of that system. So really strong agreement from all the runs today. Gives me pretty strong confidence not only in its track but in its intensity. And again, we can look at those wind gusts and we can see they are again around that 130, 140 kilometers per hour mark. Again, looking at 80 or 90 miles per hour. So really, really intense system. Again, any subtle movements in its track could have some knock-on effects. But given the kind of runs agreeing here, I suspect we won't see too many changes unless something drastic does happen with the jet stream in the next day or so. Now, finally, if we look at the latest ensembles, you can see a bit of a spike in upper air temperatures into Saturday with the warm sector moving through and some heavy rain. but then a big drop in those upper temperatures with that cold front sweeping through, around a 12 degree, 15 degree drop there from some of the warmest to some of the coolest runs. It does stay cold for a couple of days before it rebounds back towards average and kind of oscillates around that mean. Precipitation a little bit up and down, but nothing too drastic there. So yes, going to be pretty extreme short term, but medium to longer term, it doesn't actually look too bad at all. Sea level pressure, you can see again, up and down, very big dip there into Saturday. And again, if we look at Glasgow, you can see it's even more pronounced there, down towards kind of 970, 980. You think, well, we saw 940 from the operational runs, and that's because the 940's out to sea. Inland pressure is probably more around that 970, 980 point, especially for Glasgow further southwards. But you see, it is a blip. Pressure does return to something around mean or towards that high pressure level as we progress later on into October. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. 2 meter temperatures are a little bit all over the place in the next few days, all depending on the warm and colder sectors, but generally longer term towards the mid-teens, not too unexpected for this time of year. And to finish, if we look at the latest ensembles, very, very similar from the ECMWF. Big spike in the temperature and precipitation into Friday and Saturday. Drop, and then it returns a little bit above average and then hovers around average there into early to mid-October. So a little bit all over the place there, but back towards something a little closer to average. So some really extreme conditions coming over the next few days with Storm Amy, some very heavy rain in places and some severe winds. Please do stay safe out there. Not seeing too many rumblings in the news about this yet, but I suspect that will ramp up tremendously in the next day or two as we see the first named storm of the year. I can't stress enough, it is going to be intense, but the only fortunate thing is that it is a kind of a common track for these systems. So the areas where the strongest winds will be are probably well acclimatized to be seeing big storm systems. It's not like we're seeing 100 mile an hour or 90 mile per hour winds coming in from the north down the east coast. Those sort of systems, those are what's called the most damage, where it does impact areas that are not used to these sort of winds. So it is a typical storm track, this. So hopefully it doesn't catch too many people off guard. But I must stress it is a very intense system. It's not a lower end named storm. This is definitely medium to upper tier when we look at those raw wind speeds. So right, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you stay tuned as we'll have more updates out for the next couple of days. Of course, do suspect there will be updates to the weather warnings. So we'll give those to you and we'll see you again for another video soon.